Welcome to the Seven Figure CEO podcast, where we talk all things marketing strategies, business systems, personal development insights, and conduct interviews with successful CEOs and entrepreneurs. Learn the exact strategies on how seven-figure CEOs market and scale their companies with your host, Chris Rodriguez. Welcome to the Seven Figure CEO podcast. Your host, Chris Rodriguez, here with the one and only Mr. Akil Acevedo. He is a 5th degree black belt in Taekwondo, a 5th degree black belt in Kukkiwon, a 5th degree black belt in Chung Do Kwan. There's a lot of black belts. He's been training for over 30 years, and he's the owner of Cho's Legacy Taekwondo Martial Arts in Morristown, New Jersey. He ended up taking over the school in 2014 from his Grandmaster, who opened it in 1973. He's a brand new father to a beautiful baby girl, and I'm so excited to have him on the podcast today. Mr. Acevedo, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Rodriguez, it's great to be here. Great to be with you.
Yes. So I just learned that you took your school over. You took Cho's Legacy over in 2014. It's been open since 1973. Yes. Talk to me about that transition. How did that happen? That's a really cool story.
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely happy to jump into it. So, kind of how it worked is, I've been at the school since I was 7 years old. So, and I grew up in the school. Just loving martial arts, loving, training in Taekwondo. It was funny when I was a young kid, I always knew I wanted to be a martial artist and Taekwondo teacher. I just never knew kind of how the opportunity was gonna kind of arise. Growing up, where I was here in Jersey, my parents being big proponents of getting an education and going off to college, being second generation in this country, and my parents immigrating from the Dominican Republic when they were young teenagers, real big focus on education and going to college and improving themselves. So sure. I went off to school, did the college thing, got an engineering degree and worked out in the corporate world for 6 years, had a great run. And it just so happened kind of at the end of my tenure in engineering, when I was kind of looking to do something a little different, my Grandmaster was getting to retire back in 2013 into 2014, and had kind of approached me about taking over the school and buying it from him. And at first I kind of passed on the opportunity, to be honest, and I said, no, I think I'm gonna wait. And then my senior instructor, he kind of stepped in and took it over, and he was running 2 schools at the same time, and he just couldn't do it. It was just him. And he's like, hey, would you come back here and really think about taking over the headquarters school? And I said, well, same opportunity doesn't come around twice. And I jumped in that second go around and bought the school in the beginning of 2014 and had it ever since.
Wow, that's so cool. I had no idea that you're a college graduate and went to school for an engineering degree. Talk to me about, what was that transition like of going from this 9-to-5 corporate world in the office at a desk to now being an entrepreneur?
Oh, I mean, it was such a whirlwind. It's a complete 180. It was just so different. People, ask me all the time, oh, do you ever miss it? Do you ever want to go back to the corporate world? And now, 8 years later, almost 9 years, I can say, hey, I never want to go back. I want to be an entrepreneur and run my own business or multiple businesses, moving forward. I will say one thing. It definitely helped me. I think given where I was working, I was working for a big investment bank. Probably heard of it, Goldman Sachs. So really high pressure, high demands. Like, we used to work all crazy hours. I remember 60, 70-hour work weeks. Like, it feels like it was yesterday. And I think it really prepared me to open up and run the school, just because I had to wear multiple hats as an engineer, and being able to manage people. I was managing people on my team, some that were older than me, some that had 10, 15, 20 more years of engineering experience with me. And just having to kind of manage those type of people and different personalities, I think really helped when I opened the school and I had to wear different hats that I wasn't accustomed to before, not just running classes, but trying to figure out marketing, trying to figure out accounting, trying to figure out,
All of
management,
it.
and it kind of all inclusive. But I think that developing that type of work ethic, I think definitely helped me when I transitioned to the school and I really had to like push and really push myself to kind of do things, differently outside my comfort zone, no more working 9 to 5 and vacation days and that sort of thing. Especially in those first few beginning years.
I love it. I have a very similar type family, immigrants from Puerto Rico. You're going to college, you're gonna graduate, you're gonna
Yes.
get a great job. And I knew that entrepreneurship was the way that I wanted to go. But I think there is something to say about, making the commitment of I'm going to go to school, I'm going to do great, and I'm going to see this through, regardless if I'm going to use that degree, afterwards. So very similar stories in regards to that. You took over Chose in 2014. Tell me a little bit about where the school was at that point. Were there any employees versus where you're at now, and just what kind of services, what's the market, are you predominantly kids, adults? Just give us a little overview of Chose.
Sure. So in terms of Chose, when I took over the school, we had at the time, I would say about like 50 active students. My Grandmaster had kind of really grown the school in his headquarters location in Morristown, which he started in 1973. At one point he had like nine school locations that he had split
Wow.
with his brother. He kind of consolidated down to like 3 locations that he mainly like focused on. And, at, his heyday, I would say probably in the 80s and early 90s, he told me he had upwards of 400 students. Completely different time then. I think completely different market he was servicing. I think when I took over, we were primarily a kids-based school, and I'd say to this day we still pretty much are. Servicing kids ages like 4 to 12 years old is our primary demographic, and then we have like a handful of like teens and adults. So he kind of had really kind of scaled back. I think from there, I kind of really focused on trying to think about my offerings. I kind of felt like when I took over, things were kind of carte blanche. So it was kind of like, come to whatever class you want, and you'll go through the class, and the experience was really all the same. So from there, I kind of really am working through the systems in the school, and a lot through what I learned with Maya when I joined in 2015, kind of really helped me to develop a little bit more systemization and they really think about like the curriculum and the experience I want to provide to my student base. So like since then we've been able to grow to 140 students. Right now we have like 2 full-time employees, so myself, and I also have a program director, and that's kind of where we stand right now.
I love it. And what are some of the roles that you're focusing on? Are you on the mat? Is that something you really enjoy? Talk to me about, what does a day in the life look like?
Yeah. So for me, day in the life is I'm an owner and operator who's very much still on the mat. I love to be on the mat. I love to teach kids. I feel like my day really just like flies by when I'm teaching. And sometimes I'll go through a day and it could be hectic. I could have easily 5 classes a day, then plus like 2 or 3 private lessons in the early afternoon, ranging like those private lessons anywhere between 30 to an hour in duration. So I mean a pretty packed schedule for kind of like a one-man dojo, so to speak. But that's pretty much like a day in the life for me. So really I'm focused on a lot of the client experience on the mat, interacting with the students, interacting with the parents. And then, my kind of program director helps me with a lot of like the front office stuff. And then like all like the communications we'll do out to the students, letting them know about events, what's happening in the school. Then I try and jump in on Facebook and stuff and kind of do our videos and things like that. But yeah, a lot of my time now is kind of really spent on the mat, and then kind of focusing, what direction we want to go in terms of our offerings and events for our students and our families.
Awesome. So you took it over in 2014. One of the big mistakes that I see, just kind of business owners in general, doesn't even have to be in the martial arts industry. Like if I had to like break it down to three, there would be, they don't hire fast enough. They don't reinvest their profits into marketing, and they don't find a mentor. You took this over in 2014, and then you just said in 2015, you found Maya, the Martial Arts Industry Association. Yep. Talk to me about, how did you find Maya? Who's your consultant? And, sure, how has that experience with Maya been for you so far?
No, I'd love to jump into it. When I took over in 2014, I realized from being a student to then being a martial arts school owner were two vastly different things. And that there was a lot about just running a school and running classes that I just didn't know. And, I had a little bit of help from, my former instructor and also my Grandmaster at the time. But I just kind of noticed like they were very like antiquated in kind of how they did things. I don't think that's a good or necessarily like bad thing per se, but just they had just a different experience set from what they had gone through in the years before. And, I kind of realized, well, I'm not exactly 100% like them. So I knew I was going to probably have to do some things a little bit differently in terms of how I ran the school, how I ran the business side, to make it really work for me. In my case, I'm not Korean, in Taekwondo, it's this very big Korean martial art. My area that I'm in, very like high income, there's not a lot of minorities that necessarily look like me, especially running a martial arts school where I am. Sure. So I knew I wanted to do things a little bit differently. And it was kind of funny. I had received, I think towards the tail end of 2014, and how I got introduced to Maya was I got like the Maya Success magazine. And it came to my school, and I was looking at it and I was reading it, and I was like, wow. And I was looking through some of these profiles, and I'm like, wow, there's some like young school owners like around my age in different parts of the country that kind of look like me, or had maybe some type of similar experiences, or came out of the military or something and started their own martial arts schools that were really rocking it and really doing well. And I was like, wow, there's this whole other kind of group of martial arts school owners that are really making an impact in their communities, and then also doing well financially. So I kind of saw that, and I was like, wow, this kind of piques my interest here. Let me see if I can learn a little bit more. And then I saw advertisements for the Super Show. And, it's like now at this point, it's like early 2015, I'm a year into the school. I kind of took my losses. I'm like living off some of the savings I had from my corporate job from engineering. And I'm like, man, things are tough. I was like, I got to try and do something different here.
Reality is setting in, yes. Right?
And I'm like, I want this to work. I'm willing to work at it, do whatever I got to do. I know I got to take my lumps, but I was like, let me see if I can get to this Super Show and see what this is going to be about. So, I went to Vegas 2015, middle of the summer, first time out there, didn't know what to expect. Super Show's this big, massive thing. There's martial artists everywhere. And, I think I sit in the first, business forum for first time, studio owners coming in, and Mr. Silverman does his whole breakdown. And I still remember it to this day of taking one event and how you can, have it touch all these different aspects of your business and help you, generate revenue and encourage retention. I think he was talking about an in-school tournament, I think, at the time. And I'm just like, I was just blown away. And I was just like, wow, I can do this and incorporate all these different things. I never learned this before. I never thought about it. My Grandmaster was kind of old fashioned in the sense he said, oh, you teach good Taekwondo, you teach well, like the students will come, type of thing.
Build it and they will come, right?
Yeah. I'm like, that's great. But I'm like, I got to try something a little different. So, I joined up Maya right then and there on the spot, and kind of started my first year consulting. with the group and started kind of making some changes and developing my programs, which kind of took me a little while. I think I was a little slow to implement, honestly, in the beginning. And then now, since like about 2016, I've been with Mr. Parman as my consultant, and it's just been a great working relationship. It's been a great mentor to me. It's really helped my school to grow, and just really kind of help my mindset, just to kind of open my eyes to what the school can become. And it's really neat, Chris, because I remember when I first listed out my goals, I was looking at them the other day from like 2015 when I went to the Super Show. And I think like Mr. Silverman or maybe a year later, Mr. Parman was like, hey, what gross you guys want to get to? Like, what would be like a dream goal for you? And I think at the time, I remember I was barely making like 8,000 a month. And I think I said my goal was like to hit like 25,000. I thought that'd be like remarkable. And, at this point, I've like way of
crushed that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's just amazing to think like, kind of how far I came and where I can still go, to feel like now, hey, I made one of the biggest changes in my life direction wise. And I'm all better for it. And, I wouldn't have changed it for the world. But I'd say one thing you mentioned before, I would definitely agree to, just speed of implementation. I think, I could have implemented some things a lot faster. I think a lot of times you get used to doing things your same old way and in your bubble, and you're like, hey, nah, I don't think this is going to work for me. Like, I'm a different market, or I'm like in a different place, or my customers are different. And then when I just started doing some things a little differently, it just kind of started snowball effect. And I was like, wow, like this really works. And it's not different because I'm in New Jersey or because it's me, Akil Acevedo. Like it can definitely work for me too.
I love it. I kudos to you for only waiting a year to find a mentor, right? Many people will go through a decade of running their business, trying to figure it out on their own, and not really knowing, like, you don't know what you don't know. So not really understanding, like, man, there are people out there just like me where, you might think $25,000 a month is doing great, but compared to $50,000 or $80,000 a month, right? It just kind of completely opens your eyes. And very similar situation. I went to a Maya event that was here in Tampa. It wasn't the Super Show that Mr. Silverman was putting on. And it was like, wow, there's so much out there that I had absolutely no idea about. And, I think Maya in general it's like having the cheat codes to when you're playing a video game, it. And in no way do I want, one thing I can't stand is when like coaching companies or, any type of consulting, they're like, oh, it's easy. Like, it's not easy. Like, you have to put in the work, right? But if you follow the recipe, if you follow, what your consultant puts out in front of you, then we can absolutely help you, achieve those goals. So that is so cool. Thank you so much for sharing that story.
You're welcome.
Let's kind of shift over. You are a GrowPro client. So we do your marketing and your ads, and then you recently signed up for the Concierge Agent program. Talk to me a little bit about your experience with GrowPro, your account manager, Darian, and how this Concierge Agent program has been working for you.
Sure. No, happy to jump into it. I'm going to try and go back a little bit. I think I had transitioned into GrowPro. I think during COVID, to be honest, if I'm not mistaken, maybe kind of partway through, I was kind of looking to go to a different direction. I think at the time, I was still doing a lot of stuff on my own, and it was just becoming really hard to just manage the changing landscape
all of it
with social media. Yes. And just kind of juggle, just dealing with like the classes and going from video classes to virtual classes and trying to figure out, what was happening in the whole kind of marketing landscape with like social media and Facebook. And I think doing that transition, it just put a lot of peace just for me and on my shoulders to know that was getting taken care of. But, it was something that was great, working with Darian for me has just been just a phenomenal experience. Just his knowledge on kind of what's happening, across social media, what's happening with like the various accounts that he's working with. He has the data right there to kind of see, hey, this is what's working in this market for these school owners. This is what we're seeing across the board. And honestly, I just didn't have that transparency. So I would never know, like, hey, is my ad really working? I mean, Facebook says it kind of is, or I'm reaching X amount of people, but I don't know. Am I really gaining traction or not? I may see a few trials come in, or, a few leads apparently come in, but then like, how am I doing that whole follow-up? So, working with him has been great, being able to get like the reports, quarterly on how, like, where my ad spend's going, how many leads I'm pulling in, and then being able to see on my side, how many of those people are turning into students, was really phenomenal. So we saw like a big improvement just in our content creation, just standardization of what our messaging going out to that market base of ours, that kid market, going out to a lot of moms, a lot of parents. And, we got a lot of good feedback. Hey, we saw you, whenever we have someone come in, we always ask them, hey, where did you see us? And honestly, 90% of the time it's a Facebook ad, it's an Instagram ad. And I had one mom just last week say, hey, I don't know what you're doing, but I was just thinking about martial arts, and like you popped up on Instagram, and I said, this is perfect. My daughter's just talking about it. And she's like, we just jumped in to do a lesson, to do an introductory lesson. So just having that kind of streamline of everything and just the marketing message has just been, just tremendous for us. And then like transitioning to like the concierge piece, brand new program. I was kind of unaware how it was going to really work at first. And, I was a little bit unsure because I'm kind of the type of person I like to let other people try things first. And
you do the beta first.
Yeah. And kind of see how it goes. But honestly, for me, with the experience I had with GrowPro and how it's been over the first year, when I saw concierge come out, I was just like, oh, I have to jump on this. And my main thing was just that, I noticed like we were doing things on our end, my program director trying to make follow-up calls, trying to call leads as soon as they came in through our CRM. And, we just couldn't get in touch with everybody, and really not at the best times. Given the fact we're getting in the afternoon around 12:30, she gets in, she's there till 9, and we notice like a lot of our leads be coming in the morning, we're just not available to be able to hit them. And the fact that, the concierge service was pretty much hiring another person, working another 8 hours, 9 to 5, and getting all these people in the prime time of right when they're coming in. So it's been a game changer for us the last month. I can honestly say unequivocally, our appointment book is, we are booked with one-on-ones for the next month. And we've been booked, since we started concierge end of October, all the way through November. That at this point, I had a phone call with Marina just last week in terms of how we were doing and going over our calendar. And I said, hey, at this point, we have to double book people. I have to do semi-private introductory lessons, because if not, I'm not going to be seeing people till January. And
good problem.
It's a good problem to have. It's definitely a good problem to have. And I feel real fortunate that's the case. But the team has been fantastic. I couldn't say more beneficial things. They're there. If you have a question, you shoot an email, you get a response less than 24 hours, if not the same day. I'm always able to get a hold of somebody or book a meeting and can go over, where we're at. And I couldn't speak more highly about it, to be honest.
Thank you for that. That is so great to hear. I was also nervous launching a brand new program, right? Anytime that I'm putting my name on something, you want it to be perfect. But as we know, as business owners, you're not going to see where the holes are unless you start scaling it up, right?
Yes.
And really, really proud of our concierge agent program. I know Marina's been crushing it for you. And, I do want to kind of rewind here for a second, because you found us during COVID, and You are in one of the states, New Jersey, that really was affected a lot more than like a state like I'm in, like Florida or Texas. And what we've seen kind of across the board standard is that the schools in California, New York, and New Jersey really were, kind of affected the most. So talk to me about what that was like for you, and, what was just kind of like your mindset getting through COVID?
Sure. So if we kind of rewind to 2020, probably the year that all martial arts school owners want to just forget.
Right.
Right from their mind. I remember, when kind of COVID started, the rumblings end of February and then into March, here in New Jersey, we shut down the middle of March, was like the mandate. And I was just like, I think like everyone, it was like, what is going on? Like, government is shutting us down. This is nuts. And I remember when we shut down mid-March, and I think a week had about gone by. And I met with my team. So it was, at the time, it was me, head instructor, my program director, who had actually just started with me in February. Wow. And she's still with me today. She's a great member of my team, Mary Rose. And I had an assistant instructor at the time who was working for me. And I told them, Chris, I said, I have this weird feeling that this is going to last longer than we think. At the time, I had no idea it was going to last as long as it did, to be honest. I thought maybe it was going to be like a month or 2 months at max. And I was just like, I'm like, I think we got to start like pre-recording like classes, like doing like video recordings and like issuing them out like via our software system. We're using Spark as our CRM. And I was just like, I don't know how we're going to do it. We're going to start. So we took a whole week and we just started recording lessons, right, for all the different groups. And we got that out really quick. I'd say within 1 to 2 weeks time. Nice. It was pretty fast. That at that point I was learning like, this whole thing about speed to implementation is important, because I told my team, I said, if we do nothing, we sit on the sideline and just wait. Some people will hang around and wait for us, but not everyone, I think, of our members are going to really stick around. Eventually, they're going to be like, time to cost cut, and martial arts is out. They're not doing anything. I think after a month, when we got into like April, and I started seeing like everyone was going on to Zoom, and Zoom was working well for some of my colleagues and those also like that I saw in Maya, I said, okay, now we got to get on Zoom. Like now we got to be, live with our students, doing Zoom classes, interacting. And we started doing that, I'd say probably from like April up and through July. So for us in Jersey, like mid-July is when we were allowed to open our doors again. But I knew where I'm located, my client base just wasn't ready to go back in person, at least not in the studio. So what we started doing, one thing that kind of helped us, at this point, our student base probably dropped about a third to a half of what it was. I remember revenue in May and June pretty much dropping like 50%. So, we were just really just.
And you have this new hire too, right?
Yeah. You have this
brand new hire. Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. Oh my God, like, how am I going to make payroll? How are you going to make this work? And, I remember at the time, beginning, I was literally doing just Zoom classes out of my kitchen of my apartment. So where I am now. And like, I remember my housemates upstairs hearing me, hey guys, get your nunchucks. Like, here we go. And like, it's just kind of funny, but it's just interesting what you'll do, to keep moving forward with your business and your dream, and just to make it survive. And I think just the speed of implementation and doing that really helped us to keep a lot of our students just engaged and keep them want to keep coming in and really rally behind us. And I think in July, when we were able to open up our doors, we were kind of fortunate because we have a big park, actually, probably like a few minutes from behind our school. So we actually started doing classes in the park. And we did that throughout the summertime, July and August, and actually going up into October, believe it or not, of 2020. So where, a lot of our families were coming outside, they actually ended up loving it. They're like, hey, we should do some more classes outside when it's nice.
Yeah.
And then kind of in the fall time, September and October, I did a hybrid of in studio classes with virtual component with Zoom, and then park classes. So I would spend about half my day in the park and then end my day in the studio like twice a week. And then like another 3 days a week, I'd start in the park and then end my day in the studio. So it was definitely a juggling act, a balancing act. But we were able to make it through and grow throughout 2020 and into 21.
Whatever it takes, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
that's the mindset of the successful entrepreneur. So
Exactly.
talk to me, we've talked about the past, we've talked about the present. Let's talk a little bit about the future. What does the next level look like
Yeah.
for you? What does that
Definitely.
look like?
I think for me, one of the things I think about now, especially as I have like my newborn, my first child, I think a lot about now like building a team around me. It's always something that, I've seen some of my peers do. I've seen, my mentor, Mr. Parman, do, and others. And now it's kind of something that's really on the forefront of my mind. I think a lot about, the book I read early on when I started my business, E-Myth by Michael Gerber. Really, I know you've read it, Chris, and, just about being the technician. And I think a lot of martial arts school owners, I think that's how we're taught. I think that's how we're known to be. We're like the subject matter experts, and we feel like we got to do everything. I think for me, growing up in my Grandmaster school, he had a handful of instructors. He kind of like spent 10 years, I found out, on the mat, and then he was kind of done and he started delegating out. But I never really learned from him how to actually do that and how to really kind of implement that for me. So that's something that I kind of think about in terms of growth, to build the team around me to help me to start to get out of teaching every single class. So then I can teach the classes I really want to teach and really focus on client experience and kind of really building that experience and then building other instructors around me. And empower others.
It's interesting as we, go up through the ranks, and, a lot of our schools have leadership programs. Like, we know how to lead on the mat, but transferring that into leading and building a team, especially when, we are so good at being the technician and we also enjoy being the technician, can, be a tough transition for a lot of school owners. So I love that, that's going to kind of be the next evolution of Chose, is providing those, opportunities to others.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that, just to add, Chris, that was one of the things that really interested me when I started the school. Because I kind of really wanted to provide like some type of like pathway for others where they can know, okay, hey, this is how I can grow in the school. This is like what I could become. And that'd be one of my biggest dreams. Like, if one day, I can pass on the school to a student or help another student be able to open up their own school, if that's the path they want to do, that'd be really exciting. But like, I also realized like it's a whole nother skill set. It's a whole, like you said, leading others in that capacity of running the business and helping them to manage and have, expectations and deliverables and things like that, and giving them the room to be able to lead, but also not step on their toes and let them make mistakes. That's something I'm working through now, and something I definitely want to grow into more of that leadership role.
I love it. As we wrap up here, what would you say to the school owner that maybe is feeling stuck right now and they don't really know how to get to that next level? What words of advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I would just say, if you're stuck, you're frustrated, you're looking to see, how do you get out, kind of from where you are and to that next stage. Number one, I'd say be willing to go outside your comfort zone. Reach out to people, find that mentor, look for those that are where you think you want to be or in the direction you want to go. And then, mimic their type of success, and you'll mimic what they do, listen carefully, and then don't be afraid to implement, and try and implement quickly. Things don't necessarily have to be perfect, but it just has to be good enough that you get started. You kind of figure out, okay, what'd you do right? What'd you do wrong? And then you can make it better, for the next time when you go to implement again. I'd say just try and implement faster, and, be willing to go out that comfort zone and find those that can kind of help you, that are where you want to be, or where you think you want to be in the future.
Awesome. Great share. Appreciate you coming on to the podcast, sharing your story of building Cho's legacy, and really excited to see where you take it next. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Chris. It was great, and I appreciate being able to kind of share my story.